Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 219, Andrade versus Blanchfield, also known as UFC Vegas 69. And with that, we are going to retire that naming convention forever since we hit the magic number. I am your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing A-okay. Peek behind the curtain for all the viewers. Normally, we try to record this show on Wednesday of the week before the fights. Sometimes life jumps up and bites one or both of us. Tonight, we are recording on Sunday. The Super Bowl wrapped about 20 minutes ago, tops. I mean, we would be remiss in not saying a word or two about it. I mean...
Oh, my gosh. So let's say this. MMA fans, and right now, this is when all the European listeners can like speed ahead for like 2 minutes or something. We complain about bad calls in MMA. Mm-hmm. It happens in every sport. I am not an Eagles fan by any means. I'm a Patriots fan. They beat my Patriots in the Super Bowl. I couldn't have cared less who won the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the Eagles. I like either team. Mm-hmm. That holding call was one of the worst calls I've ever seen. It literally handed the Chiefs the Super Bowl, the championship. It was horrendous. Don't at me, Kansas City fans. Congratulations on your victory and all that nonsense. But that happens on every single passing play. Every single time a quarterback drops back to pass, a cornerback touches a wide receiver in that way. That was horrendous. I think it's the worst call in the history of the Super Bowl. I think it literally gave them the victory. I'm mad. I'm not even an Eagles fan.
Yeah, no.
You know what I'm mad? I'm mad that I wasted like 3 hours or 4 hours of my life watching that game and like really the whole season for that ending.
Yeah.
The NFL should be ashamed of themselves for that. It was terrible.
And you make a great point about how that level of quote holding happens on literally every passing play. I mean, you're a police officer, and I know you are far removed at this point from writing traffic tickets if you ever did. Yeah, but it's the equivalent of writing someone a ticket for being 3 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Exactly. Yeah. Technically, I can give you a speeding ticket for doing 26 under 25, but you just don't do it. Yeah. Not with the game on the line. The team you're going against the best player on the planet Earth, who's been going up and down the field all game, or especially the second half, and then you have this stop. Give yourself a chance. You're going to be down by 3. You got to have 90 seconds. You'll have to go about 40 yards to get in field goal range, maybe 75 yards to win the game, to win the freaking Super Bowl. And instead, you let them run the clock down, kick. It was horrendous. I feel so bad for Eagles fans. Kansas City fans, cool. You're not going to change your mind. So literally don't comment because all you're doing is wasting your time. You're not going to change my mind. Don't go, one of our players at the 3:15 mark of the third quarter got stop. That was terrible. You're not going to change my mind. Let's talk about this horrendous fucking terrible card too.
And that is more fired up than Keith is going to be about anything to do with the actual UFC card we're talking about here. 11 fight card. Obviously, this would have been fight night, Sandhagen versus Vera. That would have been some hot stuff right there, either paving the way for Corey Sandhagen to get back into the title picture or finally stamping Marlon Vera as, hey, maybe I'm the next guy, after being in this very long line for a very long time. That ended up dropping off and getting pushed back to UFC 285, 286. It's on to one of the next big pay-per-view cards. We thought we were going to get Tyler Santos versus Aaron Blanchfield. I was looking forward to having that conversation with you, and I'm sure we'll touch on it at least briefly before we talk about the main event we did get, since that dropped off with so little time that I imagine you, like me, had gotten into your prediction process for that one. But yeah, Tyler Santos is out exactly a week before fight night, replaced by Jessica Andrade. So
I want to say this. Sometimes life gets crazy. This was one of the craziest weeks of my life. My wife had her. She's a music teacher, director, play director. She had her play. She had extra work. Just a crazy. Everything in life happened this last 2 weeks. I think this is the least prepared I've ever been for a card. So don't follow my pick. You said 11 fights, only saw 10. I just realized that I don't have any notes on Alexander Hernandez versus Jamall. That's how unprepared I am. So.
Well, I got you. I got you on that.
All right, cool.
I have copious notes on both gentlemen.
All right, there you go.
This one, to even call it just another fight night card, would be a kindness. I mean, Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield is an interesting fight, but however it turns out, this thing was made on a week's notice and might end up determining a title shot. Like that's not ideal.
No,
because you know what? I don't want to jump too far ahead, but if Andrade blows Blanchfield out of the water, did we really learn that much about either one, or vice versa? You know,
I think you learn a little bit about Blanchfield, but yeah, you're setting up a title shot for someone who already fought for the title. Can't get too excited about that. I'm more excited about Andrade fighting back at 115 again. Now she already fought Weili Zhang too. It's just a terrible situation. Like if I was given a grade for this card, like a D-. I'm not going F because you still have Blanchfield and Jessica Andrade, two really great talents, main card, main event. But the rest of the card is hideous.
I mean, this is a free card, so I'm not even going to ask how much you pay for this, but I'd pay a few bucks to get into the official weigh-ins and see like William Knight and Ovince St. Preux get up on there and see if they both make 205. I know they're not fighting each other, but just I'm giving good odds that one of our light heavyweights blows weight. Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. Should we just dive into these prelims?
Yep.
All right. At least as the card is currently constituted, the first fight out of the gate at UFC Fight Night 219 is a flyweight matchup between Juancamilo Ronderos and Clayton Carpenter. Ronderos, the 27-year-old Colombian, is 4-1 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. He made a short notice debut all the way back in May of 2021, so almost 2 years ago, stepping in for the injured or COVID afflicted Raulian Paiva against David Dvorak. It did not go well. He got choked out by Dvorak in under half a round. He's been gone for 2 years since then. He's had a couple of fights that were made and then canceled, primarily due to him. Finally makes it back into the cage here, and he will be welcoming Carpenter. The 26-year-old Arizona native is 6-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He competed on Dana White's Contender Series last August, where he took a unanimous decision over Edgar Jerez that was good enough to get him into the UFC, and here he makes his debut, and he is a comfortable favorite. Carpenter, minus 280, Ronderos around plus 235. Keith, I'm not going to pretend I even remembered really clearly who Juancamilo Ronderos was, but once I reminded myself, I realized that I had wiped him out of my brain because I assumed he was going to be one and done in the UFC. We just talked last night on the UFC 284 recap about Zubaira Tukhugov, where he's treading on thin ice. He's now missed weight in 2 weight divisions in the UFC. He's had a failed drug test. He's had a suspension for conduct outside the cage. I mean, he's filling out the whole bingo card of things the UFC does not like. Dude, Juancamilo Ronderos in one fight, he debuts, he misses weight, he tests positive for cocaine afterwards and draws a USADA suspension for that. Cocaine, which is only a performance-enhancing substance in certain pursuits, and MMA is not one of them.
Yeah, it makes you like a better rock star or something, or actor or something.
I'm sure he did a great job like throwing his TV out his hotel window afterwards, but it did not help him against Dvorak. I mean, obviously, you get a pass for blowing weight when you step up on literally 1 day's notice.
Yeah.
Like Ronderos had been training in Vegas. Paiva was out and he got the call. I think he was an Extreme Couture guy and just stepped in, but he looked terrible against Dvorak. Then, tested positive for cocaine. It's a little tough to.
In fairness, you got to remember, you did just say he was in Las Vegas. Like, who doesn't test positive for cocaine while you're in Las Vegas? Like, you should get a freebie for that. Yeah. Oh, he's a Las Vegas guy? We don't count that.
I thought it was like the rosin bin over there. He just goes to he's just like smacking cocaine off his hands as he steps up to like the squat bar. Ronderos has other problems than cocaine. His problem is he's also kind of a squat, undersized flyweight. I mean, from what I saw of him versus Dvorak, I don't think he would have had much for Dvorak on any kind of camp.
Does cocaine stunt your growth? Is that like is that one of those lies that they say?
I mean, I hesitate to make a joke and offend all of our Colombian listeners, but dude, you're from Colombia and you had to go all the way to Vegas to like get to find cocaine. uh Juancamilo Ronderos is kind of a short, squat flyweight. I mean, he was at a serious size disadvantage against Dvorak, and Dvorak was a bad style matchup for him. But looking at his like full length fights on regional promotions, like he's short, and instead of being able to bounce effectively into range, use feints, he just overreaches a lot on the feet. Southpaw, just I constantly saw him kind of reaching too much with his punches, throwing kicks that weren't there. He's a pretty good grappler once it gets on the ground, but he doesn't have a reliable way to get it there. And I think that probably spells trouble against Carpenter. Carpenter is super green. He's kind of an unknown quantity himself, but just in being younger, being busier, having an actual decent sized flyweight body, and like well-rounded skills, I'm leaning towards Carpenter by decision here. Like, there's no telling whether Ronderos has enormously improved himself in the last 2 years. I mean, he has been in Vegas most of that time. He's been at a good camp, but he certainly hasn't gotten any taller. Give me Carpenter by decision here.
Yeah, I didn't do too much study on this one, but yeah, as you mentioned, Ronderos did take the fight like 12 hours notice. Yeah. It was like they called him at like 7 o'clock the night before. It was like, hey, tomorrow morning, make weight. He did beat Eric Shelton, so that's a good thing. He's a southpaw who backs straight up. He lacks head movement. Fights I've seen him, he throws really wild, like just swings wildly, wants to brawl. Lots of kicks. He will wrestle, as you mentioned, but I would definitely wouldn't categorize him as a wrestler. I'd say he's actually a weaker wrestler. He does have 2 submission wins, so that's good. But he was subbed with one arm in his last fight against David Dvorak. So
that's right. The one arm choke. Oh.
Yeah. Carpenter, only 26. High volume. I like his tight boxing. He cuts angles well, changes stances in mid combo, which I love. Definitely a slip and rip style kind of guy. He really springs into his shots, which kind of adds to his power. Beautiful high kick knockout. I saw some hard calf kicks. He was rocked in the Contender Series, which doesn't make you feel good moving into this fight. He's a good wrestler. Good top control. Looks to advance on the ground. Got some sub skills. He does have a knee bar submission on his record, so that's cool. I wish I got more time to watch the film of both these guys, especially Ronderos. But what I've seen, Carpenter looks much better than Ronderos. I see Carpenter lands more on the feet, adds in a few takedowns, and Carpenter wins the decision.
Next up, we have a welterweight matchup between AJ Fletcher and Themba Gorimbo. Fletcher, the 25-year-old Louisiana native, is 9-2 overall. He is 0-2 since joining the UFC out of the 2021 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted last March, dropping a unanimous decision to Matthew Semmelsberger. Came back last August at UFC 278 and lost to Ange Loosa, also by unanimous decision. So coming off the first 2 losses of his career, he's going to look to get into the win column. He's stepping in against Gorimbo here in place of Connecticut's own Billy Goff. Gorimbo, 32-year-old Zimbabwe native by way of South Africa, is 10-3 overall. This will be his debut. He fought most recently last June at Fury Fighting Championship, taking unanimous decision over Julio Rodriguez. Despite Fletcher being 0-2 in the UFC and being the one stepping in on late notice, he's actually a comfortable favorite here. Minus 240, Gorimbo plus 200 on the comeback. I've got to say, I was a little surprised at the line here. Fletcher, I pinned him as a prospect to watch, seeing him fight in Louisiana all the way back in like 2019. He was 21 or 22 years old, was just already an absolute physical specimen, good power wrestler who his stand-up at the time consisted mostly of just big wrestler overhand fastballs. But I figured, he's 22. He'll have plenty of time to develop. I expect to see this guy in the UFC in the next couple of years. I was right on one count. I did see him in the UFC in the next couple of years. I was wrong on the other count because his skill set is still basically the same. He's still a guy that, he's an explosive athlete. He does put that to good use in his offensive wrestling, but his striking repertoire is still pretty basic. He's added obviously flying knees and stuff. He'll throw out the occasional kick, but when stuff pops off, what he goes to is just big overhand rights. His gas tank has proven to be a bit suspect at the UFC level for people you can't just blow through in 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, going against Gorimbo's a tall, lanky grappler who doesn't have great offensive wrestling, and he has the bad habit of defending takedowns with a front headlock, which, I mean, it worked fine for him fighting in EFC in Africa. It's going to run him into problems at the UFC level. Like, that's just not, it doesn't work consistently on UFC level fighters. But if there's somebody in the UFC welterweight division that's going to work on, a guy that's just going to shoot straight into a front headlock and get guillotined at the UFC level, it might be AJ Fletcher. Despite the fact that he's a 2-1 underdog here, I'm kind of leaning towards the newcomer Gorimbo, just as the guy that he has been in camp for a fight. Always tough to get a read on how elite someone's skills are when they're coming from a promotion like EFC. But I think this guy is the truth, at least to the extent that he's going to be too much for AJ Fletcher. Give me Gorimbo by a late submission here. Just, I'm going to say he kind of pesters Fletcher tired into taking a bad shot in the 3rd round, either guillotines him or takes us back and chokes him out.
Yeah, this is an intriguing fight. Kind of two really unknown guys. Fletcher, I mean, I know he's been in the UFC for a little bit, but he's only 25, so I think he can still improve. He's a high-level athlete. I mean, he's physically built. I mean, he's absolutely ripped guy. I like that he can fight out of both stances, but he is a bit of a stationary target, standing right in front of his opponent, more like a Muay Thai style. He also has no reach. They talked about this. The workout, he's like the shortest reach in the history of the division. He does use feint well. I'd say he has plus power, good volume, a bit of a pressure striker. He showed some controlled pace in that fight against Losa, where he wasn't, balls to the wall. He likes these like fun spinning attacks and flying knees like he did on the Contender Series, which I don't think they're that great. He does make the mistake of backing up right on the center line. He also likes to roll with punches, which I don't like. I'd say he's an okay wrestler, but he's very physically strong, so he can get you there. His double leg is pretty explosive. Really good at dropping underneath his opponents when they open up for big shots. He's very physically strong. As you mentioned, he's jacked and grab a leg and just send you for a ride. He does struggle on bottom though, so if he gets stuck there, and he takes, if you take him down, it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to keep him there because he's not used to being on his back. He also gassed really bad in his I think it was his last fight. But in fairness, it was in Salt Lake City, and a lot of guys were having a really hard time with that. Move over to Gorimbo. Again, not a guy like you get too much film on him, being that he doesn't fight in the popular regional scene. He's 32 years old, so I don't like that. He is long and lengthy. His hands are pretty fast, though they're wild. Like, he throws a lot, like, fast strikes, but they're from wide angles. I saw one fight, he was just looked like he was just ducking and throwing and just like hoping and praying it lands. He throws a lot of kicks. He does want to get the fight to the ground. He has some fast entries, but he'll shoot from way too far away. If he gets on top, he's got some mean ground and pound. His control is pretty well. But I've actually seen him stall a little bit on top too. So that's an issue. He is a submission threat, as you mentioned. He has 6 subs on his record. I think this is 2 of the lower guys on the roster. Gorimbo has the reach advantage. Should have a pretty good, significant reach advantage. But he doesn't fight like a guy that has reach advantage. I think Fletcher will actually have the advantage on the feet. But can he stop takedowns? I think he's gonna. So I think he's actually going to find the chin of Gorimbo. I'm going to say Fletcher knocks him out. Give me Fletcher by 2nd round TKO.
We head now to the lightweight division, where Evan Elder will welcome Nazim Sadykhov to the UFC. Elder, the 25-year-old disciple of Nick Diaz, is 7-1 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He made his debut last April, stepping up and taking on Preston Parsons on short notice at welterweight and dropping a unanimous decision. He comes back now 10 months later to take on Sadykhov. The 28-year-old New Yorker, Longo Weidman product, is 7-1 as well. He fought on the Contender Series last August, thrashing Ahmad Hassanzada for 2 rounds before knocking him out early in the third. That stamped his ticket to the big octagon, where he makes a debut and is a moderate favorite. Sadykhov -175, Elder +150. Keith, tell me what you think of this matchup, who you think wins, and how.
Yeah, it's an intriguing matchup. Pretty evenly matched between the two. I'll start with Sadykhov. Sadykhov is a southpaw, fights a lot of pressure, kind of slip and rip style. I like his straight left. It's really nice. I like that he works the body. He's got some good power. He tosses an occasional spinning attack just to keep it exciting. Some really good kicks, great kicks. Good wrestling, some hard ground and pound. The one time I seen him take him down, he got right back up, and he's got good cardio. Like, he didn't slow down in the fights I seen him. Really kept a strong pace. Elder, he's his UFC debut, short notice debut. It was up at welterweight. Now he's back down to his normal weight class. So I do feel a little bit better about that. He's a southpaw, pressure striker, some good output. He does have some defense holes. One, he drops his hands, and he loads up a lot too. So he gives some tells. He also likes spinning attacks. So I wouldn't be surprised to get one of these moments where one guy spins and lands a spinning back fist, and the other guy just like answers back with it. He does a lot of kicks, some hard body kicks. He's a weak wrestler though, offensively and especially defensively. He really struggled with Preston Parsons, where Preston Parsons took him up and down over and over again, like it was a Bo Nickel fight. And he also got subbed, almost got subbed a bunch of times, got mounted, got swept. So I'm not that high on Sadykhov, but I do think, I said it this evenly matched, but I meant more like the level they are, but I actually think this is a stylistically bad matchup for Elder. Elder showed me nothing in the defensive wrestling department, and Sadykhov is the better wrestler by far. So I think Sadykhov kind of wins a one-sided dominant decision where he's getting a lot of takedowns.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I thought the kind of the main clash of styles that this fight hinged on is the fact that Elder is not a great defensive wrestler. And on the Contender Series, I mean, Sadykhov showed what people remember from that fight, if they watched it, is him just lamping Hassanzada with a just huge one-punch knockout in the third round. But he'd gotten there by largely dominating him with wrestling for the first 2 rounds. Like he took Hassanzada down in the first round, pounded on him, bloodied him. I actually gave him a 10-8 round, I was about to give him a 10-8 round that round. Then he got taken down in the second, escaped. Like it was his wrestling that really carried him to that victory. And I see no reason why he wouldn't be able to do the same to Elder. Give me Sadykhov here by, I'm going to say a 3rd round TKO on the ground, actually. Just his ability to get the fight to the ground, Elder's inability to get back up. I think he's going to take a lot of damage down there, and it's going to show by the final round. Next up, the light heavyweights take the cage, we hope, as Ovince St. Preux takes on Philipe Lenz. St. Preux, the 39-year-old Tennessee native, is 26-16 overall. He is 14-11 in the UFC. He's 14-9 at light heavyweight. He did have a 2-fight stint at heavyweight that did not go well for him, so he moved back down to light heavyweight for his last appearance, which took place last May at UFC 274. He won a split decision over the ghost of Mauricio Shogun Rua. He's going to look to make it 2 wins in a row now against Lenz. Lenz, the 37-year-old Brazilian, a fellow heavyweight / light heavyweight tweener, is 15-5 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC as the former PFL heavyweight champ. He won the heavyweight tournament the first season of PFL, so 2018, was gone all of 2019, joined the UFC, fought twice at heavyweight in 2020, losing to Andrei Arlovsky and Tanner Boser, then took all of 2021 off and came back last April at UFC Fight Night Lemos versus Andrade, where he won a unanimous decision over Marcin Prachnio, who actually appears further up this card. Odds, surprise. I don't know if they're surprising to you. I guess I'm just, I don't know. Linz minus 225, St. Preux plus 190. I mean, Ovince St. Preux is what he is, and he's just becoming the older and horrible to watch version of it. But Philipe Linz is a disappointment by any way you want to slice it since leaving PFL. I mean, he left PFL now 4 years ago, and he has 3 fights since then, and he's 1-2. So 3 fights in 4 years. He's 1-2, and just hasn't looked inspiring at either weight. Yeah, he beat Marcin Prachnio, but it was just a grind and a slog of a fight, and it's almost a year since that fight. I mean, he was a young heavyweight prospect, and now he's an old light heavyweight non-prospect. It's been a miserable couple of years for Philipe Linz, and he's a more than 2-1 favorite to get it done against Ovince St. Preux here. And I wish I knew what was making the bettors so confident, because most of St. Preux's tools and weapons have abandoned him at this point. At one point, he was a guy that had kind of an odd collection of quick knockout strikes and a very unique and opportunistic ground game, and just didn't have a whole lot going in between those parts. So his fights would be weird and boring and miserable until like he popped off and did something crazy. That's largely abandoned him now. His fights are just all miserable to watch. His 2 losses at heavyweight were terrible. His fight with Shogun was terrible. But his new superpower is just slowing down his fights and just making him kind of close and competitive.
Andrei Arlovsky style.
Very much Andrei Arlovsky style.
Yeah.
I mean, the best thing you can say about him is, like, at least he and Shogun didn't hurt each other too bad. Because just about any other light heavyweight in the UFC probably would have plunked Shogun that night.
It's like if they were like kids in the backyard and they're like, dude, those kids fist fighting, and they're like, they're just playing with each other. Don't worry, they'll be fine.
It's just OSP and Shogun. Nobody's gonna get hurt. And Philipe Linz, I mean, he just isn't that kind of fleet-footed boxer with snappy power that was an undersized heavyweight anymore. I don't know what he does well, but I'm leaning with another upset here.
Lose.
Give me Ovince St. Preux to just kind of throw this fight in the mud, win 2 rounds out of 3. Almost certainly going to be a split decision, going to be one of those fights where the 3 judges don't agree on any single round. But yeah, give me St. Preux to win a miserable decision and us never to talk about it again.
Yes. Let's just like decide now. We're not going to talk about it on the recap show. Just skip it.
They're both on the cut list.
Yeah.
Win or lose.
Yeah, OSP, I'm just done with him. Like, I think he's done. His athleticism has really faded. His output, as you mentioned, has plummeted. His speed is gone. I mean, his fight against Shogun looked like it was in slow motion. Yeah, he still has power, but that said, he was never the hardest hitter in his prime. He's a counter striker. His best is probably that fade back left hand. He does throw some kicks, but he's taken so much damage. I mean, he was recently knocked out by Jamall Hill, which, you know, has aged well, but he also got knocked out by Tanner Boser. As you mentioned, he has always had a really good ground game, underrated takedown game. Obviously, he has that Von Flue, a.k.a. the Von Preux choke, which is his specialty. But there's not much else jumping at me. Now, Linz, he's never been a good athlete. In fairness, he dropped down to 205. He looked a little bit better. Again, it was against Marcin Prachnio, so take that with what you will. He's a little flat-footed. He's never been fast. He's a patient striker. He doesn't really force things. He likes to counter-strike, but he counter-strikes with single shots. His strikes are pretty looping. He keeps his chin high in the air. Tanner Boser roughed him up with leg kicks in their fight, and he just doesn't check them. He is a BJJ black belt, so I like that, but I'm worried about his chin. Like, before his last fight, he got knocked out in back-to-back fights. Though I don't know if OSP is a guy that still could have the power to plunk him. So I'm picking Linz. I'm just not picking OSP anymore. You know what? I'll say Linz knocks him out. Like, why not?
You remember when Ovince St. Preux used to throw 5 or 6 head kicks a fight?
Yeah.
Maybe
he like really had that knockout against was it Corey Anderson? Yeah.
Oh, imagine. What round did you have, Linz?
I'll take Linz by 3rd round knockout. I don't know. I'm just throwing shit up. That one.
Next up on the UFC Vegas 69 prelims is a featherweight matchup between Jamall Emmers and the debuting Khusein Askhabov. Emmers, the 33-year-old Californian, is 18-6 overall. He is 1-2 in the UFC since joining as a veteran of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series, but he was not signed off of that appearance as he actually lost to Julian Erosa that night. He kind of went on the road after that, won 4 fights in 4 different promotions, and was signed to the UFC in 2020, where he debuted losing to Giga Chikadze, came back and beat Vince Cachero, then got heel hooked by Pat Sabatini in the first round at UFC Fight Night, Barboza versus Chikadze. That was August of 2021, and that was the last time we saw Jamall Emmers. So it has been just a little over a year and a half since his last appearance. He comes back, looks to get back in the win column against Askhabov, who wishes it had only been a year and a half since we'd seen him fight. 27-year-old Chechen, by way of Tiger Muay Thai, the Zubaira Tukhugov path. He's a perfect 23-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. This will be his UFC debut. He has not fought at all since March of 2020. To give you an idea of how long it's been since this guy has fought and why it's been this long, he was on a long win streak in WWFC, which is Ukraine's top promotion and has essentially ceased to exist in the last couple of years. Like, obviously, like, Ukraine is not in good shape. WWFC is gone, and that's why Askhabov hasn't fought. They've tried to bring him to the States several times. They signed him to Dana White's Contender Series in 2021. He wasn't able to get a visa, probably because his country was a war zone. Then they said, okay, skip the Contender Series. We're just going to sign him directly to the UFC. He wasn't able to make that one either. So here, almost 3 full years since his last appearance, the 23-0 Askhabov finally gets his UFC debut. And despite all the hardship, he is a slight favorite here. Askhabov minus 140, Emmers plus 120. I mean, normally when you have a 27-year-old, 23-0 fighter coming from Dagestan or Chechnya or Tajikistan, there's normally like some streamers and confetti coming out ahead of their UFC debut, but this is about as quiet as it gets. And I'm not sure it's going to go well for him, because the other thing about Askhabov is he didn't fight the best competition on the way in. Like WWFC, even back before Ukraine was a smoking crater, was not the highest level promotion in that part of the world. But more importantly, Askhabov was a bantamweight, and he wasn't a very big bantamweight. Jamall Emmers is going to look 2 weight classes bigger than this dude. Like, Emmers is what he is. I mean, he's a teammate of Bobby Green, and he feels to me kind of like poor man's Bobby Green in some ways. Like, his ground game's underrated. His stand-up is solid, but kind of doesn't always use to his best advantage. But he is a big featherweight. Askhabov is a undersized, he'll be a very undersized featherweight. If Askhabov can make his wrestling work on Emmers, it turns into a whole different fight. But I think this is going to be a thing where if Askhabov tries to strike with Emmers, he's probably going to lose rounds on the feet, just have trouble navigating the range, navigating the jab of Emmers. If he tries to take him down, he might be able to get him down, but I think he's going to get tired faster trying to do it. I'm always nervous picking Emmers to win a decision, but I'm taking him to win a decision here and ruin the debut of Khusein Askhabov. Give me Emmers by decision.
Look at you, Ben. Man, just going all off the straight upsets all the way down the board.
I'm going to look like a genius or a fool. Yeah.
Jamall Emmers, a well-rounded guy. As you mentioned, he is a big guy. He does have some defensive holes, though. He backs straight up on the center line, which I don't like. But he's got some good volumes. His hands are pretty quick, accurate, nice jab. His straight right is a good blow. Throws a lot of kicks, good hard kicks to the body. I like his step-in knees. He uses his size well in the clinch. He likes to lock on, blasts inside with knees. Good wrestler, chain wrestles together. He had that slick head and arm triangle choke against Rafael Barboza in the LFA, which is a good win. Askhabov, he's got a lot of experience for a guy making his UFC debut, but yeah, of course, that layoff is a big concern. But I mean, when you come in with 23 wins, you've been in some situations. Throws a lot of hard hooks. Gets wild with it, though. He can overthrow too. I'd say his plus power. He has 6 KOs. Again, moving up in weight. I wonder if that power is going to translate. He throws a lot of kicks, hard kicks, spinning attacks. He's a good wrestler, though. Nice blast double, some mean ground and pound. He has submission threat. He's got 10 subs on his record. He will lose position to chase a submission, which I don't like. And if you put him on his back, he struggles to get back up. And Emmers can wrestle, so it could go there. I think Emmers is way better than his record suggests. I think this is a much tougher fight, as you said, than most people would think. That size, it's funny you said that. It's something that does give me concern, but I still think Askhabov is they can chain wrestle, and he's still a better pure wrestler. And he might be able to catch a submission. I don't think he's gonna, but I'm gonna go with the favorite. I'll go with Askhabov. I'll say he wins by decision. But you made me feel less confident in my pick before you started breaking this one down.
We head now to the women's bantamweight division for a matchup between Lina Lansberg and Mayra Bueno Silva. Lansberg, the 40-year-old Swede, formerly known as the Elbow Princess, with a couple of tragic deaths in the Elbow royal family. She is now the Elbow Queen. She is 10-7 overall. She is 4-6 since being brought to the UFC as a sacrificial lamb for the featherweight title reign of Chris Cyborg. She is on a 3-fight losing streak over the past couple of years. That includes a unanimous decision loss to Sarah McMahon all the way back 3 years ago. Then 2 losses last year via unanimous decision to Pani Kianzad and majority decision to Carl Hossa. The most recent of those, the Hossa fight, was at UFC 280 last October. She comes here looking to not make it 4 in a row, almost certainly fighting for her job. She may have it in the back of her mind as a retirement fight. Either way, I don't know what she's thinking. But standing in her way, either way, will be Mayra Bueno Silva. The 31-year-old Brazilian is 9-2-1 overall. She's 4-2-1 since joining the UFC as the very first fighter signed out of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. She is on a 2-fight winning streak, those being a unanimous decision win over Wu Yanan last April, and then a first-round armbar of Stephanie Egger at UFC on ESPN Santos versus Hill last August. You may remember that one as being somewhat controversial because of the did she tap, did she not tap? Either way, Silva dominated that fight for the whole 77 seconds it lasted. Perhaps reflecting their opposing trajectories and winning and losing streaks, Bueno Silva is the biggest favorite on the card. She's minus 380, Lansberg plus 310. Keith, Lina Lansberg at her best was never more than kind of a tough out that was a good test for other fighters. She's firmly been a gatekeeper to the top 10 or 15 at bantamweight. But even that's kind of faded. But she's still pretty physically strong and capable of taking care of herself in the clinch. She wasn't bullied there by Pani Kianzad or Carl Hossa, both of whom are fighters that like to bully people in the clinch. But I think just it being just another 6 months down the road, she's now, she turns 41 in a couple of weeks. And Mayra Bueno Silva just being another big, strong bantamweight that's literally a decade younger than she is. And also, just kind of a bruiser. I think this is going to, sloppy boxing gives way to a clinch exchange. Bueno Silva gets a takedown from the clinch, and Lansberg might survive the first round. She's still pretty good at surviving. She doesn't get finished often by people not named Chris Cyborg, but just Silva's going to have better cardio, be stronger, be able to take the fight to the ground when she wants. Give me Silva by second round submission here.
Dude, I'm shocked that you made that pick because,
you figured I was going.
Well, I'm going Lina Lansberg. 40-year-old out of a 3-fight losing streak. Like, what's not to like in that? Lansberg, she's always been a poor athlete. She's kind of slow. She does plot forward and throw some hard blows, but there are a lot of single strikes. Throws leg kicks, but often they're naked. She strikes mainly to close the distance. She loves the like close quarters battle where she can dirty box, land those elbows that she's known for. She will drop down occasionally for a takedown, but she's a very bad defensive wrestler. She's been taking down 8 out of her 10 UFC fights. She struggles to get back up. Go back to the Carol fight. There was large parts of the fight where she was just pinned against the canvas with Carol. Now, Bueno Silva, she also isn't a great athlete. She's definitely like a Muay Thai striker that can fight out of both stances, but she likes to press the action. She keeps her boxing tight. She gets inside. She unloads combinations. I'd say decent popping shots, though she does look for one big shot to kind of chase in that beautiful knockout. She likes to throw in some spinning attacks. A lot of teep kicks. I'd say she's strong in the pumpkin, but she's a weak defensive wrestler. Marina Moroz took her down like a bunch of times in that fight. She has a submission threat. She hit a beautiful armbar from the bottom against Stephanie Egger, which I like. I'm going to go with the younger fighter, the one on the winning streak, the one that hits harder, the one that's more well-rounded. The person that's probably the biggest threat to find a finish in this fight too. So I'll go with Bueno Silva. Again, as you mentioned, like Lansberg is tough. She can take a beating. So I say Bueno Silva wins by decision.
Do you think Lansberg retires?
No, she'll probably fight like Pearl Gonzalez and bare knuckle boxing or something.
I can't think of a worse person to transition from UFC to bare knuckle boxing than Lina Lansberg. A 41-year-old who was not a good striker, like even when she was 31. Oh, that's
she's attractive though, so that's why they'd want to put her against another attractive.
She wouldn't be after a couple of fights. The 5-fight main card of UFC Fight Night 219 begins with a lightweight matchup between Jim Miller and Alexander Hernandez. Miller, the 39-year-old New Jersey native, is 35-16 with 1 no contest overall. He is 24-15 with 1 no contest in the UFC. And improbable as it sounds, the man is on a 3-fight win streak. Those being a second-round knockout of Eric Gonzalez back in October of 2021, and then 2 wins last year, a second-round TKO of Nicholas Mota in February, and a second-round submission of fellow legend Donald Cerrone at UFC 276 in July. Miller looking to make it 4 in a row, looking to get 1 step closer to his stated ambition of being the only fighter to fight at UFC 100, 200, and 300. Had been scheduled to fight Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. Benitez fell off the card like almost 2 weeks ago, and it was Miller versus TBA for a while, to the point that I assumed Miller was going to fall off the card. People were openly making fun of it during UFC broadcasts as they were still throwing Miller versus TBA up on the screen. But TBA apparently stands for Alexander Hernandez. The 30-year-old San Antonio native, 13-6 overall. He is 5-5 in the UFC. He's 5-4 at lightweight. His mixed results at lightweight led him to try a one-off fight at featherweight, which he did last December at UFC 282. He dropped to 145, took on Billy Quarantillo. He made the weight. It did not help him as Quarantillo put him away with strikes late in the second round. So he's back up at 155. He's taken on the guy that throws around the UFC record book kind of like a hot potato with Cerrone and a few others. Despite the short notice, despite one man being on a 2-fight losing streak and the other being on a 3-fight winning streak, Hernandez is a comfortable favorite here. He is minus 245, Miller plus 205. Keith, one of these guys I had a really good take on, and the other I had a bad take on and had to come back and revise my notes. You and I have been doing these previews long enough that we covered his loss to Vince Pichel as well as his loss to Joe Solecki. And at that point, we're talking about 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, my line was all Jim Miller has left now is opportunistic submissions and 6 or 7 rounds of cardio. And he responded by knocking out back-to-back fighters.
Yeah.
The last time he had knocked someone out before Eric Gonzalez was Takanori Gomi. That's how long it was. And then, against Cerrone, a guy that similar in terms of age and wear, but was a better fighter at the respective peaks, and I thought had more left in the tank. It turned out to be Miller that had more left in the tank. I've been burned by picking against Jim Miller too much. I had a good take on Alexander Hernandez. I said, drop him to 145 and take on Billy Quarantillo, who is his best win was outlasting Spike Carlisle, who's basically Alexander Hernandez.
Yeah. Redheaded Alexander Hernandez.
Yeah, like Ginger Hernandez.
Whoa.
Oh, is that racist?
as 1% of the world's population.
Yeah. Well, including our boss, like Mike Fridley is as redheaded as they come. So I'm probably fired now. So
in breaking news, guess who's the newest full-time staff member?
Oh man. Here's the thing. I like Hernandez. I was drawn in and wowed by his athletic potential early in his career, but he's 30 now, and he's a guy that just might not turn a corner. I mean, he's done all the right things. He relocated his training. He went to Factory X, which is a very very good team, and he's still the same fighter he was when he was 25. He is an incredibly explosive athlete who has wrestling that's effective, not because it's technical, but because he's fast and strong. I mean, a little bit like AJ Fletcher that we just talked about. I mean, yeah, similar to that. Hits with a ton of power. I mean, he's still in the UFC right now because he lamped Beneil Dariush in his UFC debut. And he's going to have that highlight on his reel forever. But I mean, he's still wild. He still has a ton of holes defensively, striking. For a guy who's a pretty good offensive wrestler, he's not a great defensive wrestler. And his gas tank is suspect of 155 or 145. Yeah. I mean, he can hang on for 3 rounds if he's fighting a miserably slow-paced fight like the Trinaldo fight, but otherwise he gets tired faster. I swear I'm not trying to be contrarian here, but I think I'm about to pick my 3rd or 4th 2-1 underdog. Just
do it.
I mean, Jim Miller all of a sudden strikes with surprising power. Hernandez does come in with hands down, chin in the air. Miller can touch his chin. I don't see the safe place for Hernandez here. I mean, if he comes out and just plunks Miller with an overhand right or a flying knee or something, it's over, and so long Jim Miller win streak. But I could see Miller tapping this guy out in the 2nd round when they're both a little tired. But Hernandez responds to being tired by getting sloppy and like overshooting bad takedowns, or I could see Miller even just touching him in the 1st. This could go to decision. I hope it doesn't, because there's already too many guaranteed miserable fights on this card. So out of wishful thinking, it's not wishful thinking that I'm picking Miller to win, but it's wishful thinking that he gets it done by 2nd round submission. Give me Miller by 2nd round sub.
Wow, fantastic. I love the pick. I'll say this. I wasn't prepared to do this fight. I don't know how I missed this fight. I don't know. Maybe it was because maybe when I was writing down the fights, it might have been still the TBA or something. I don't know. One thing is, if Jim Miller's on this winning streak and it's Jim Miller, like, why not give him the co-main event? Just on this card. Was
Jordan Wright versus Zach Pauga like just the people demanded?
Yeah, the masses. Yeah, just give Jim Miller the co-main event. Or how about this? Alexander Hernandez is stepping up to fight him. Why not just pull Jim Miller from the card and have him fight Alexander Hernandez a month from now in San Antonio, where the guy's from?
Okay. I'd be down for that.
Jim Miller is not the guy who's going to turn on a fight. So, I mean, maybe he really had a strict, like, I want to fight. Maybe this, the time frame. Maybe he's going on vacation. Who knows?
I mean, Miller's big. He's a big hunter and fisher. I don't know what the seasons are in New Jersey. But I don't know, man. Just, dude, that San Antonio card, I'm not even going to it.
Okay.
Like, I'm going to, I mean, normally that's one that I go out and cover in person, but I'm going to be in Georgia for my youngest daughter's like sorority cocktail night. She's like a freshman at University of Georgia.
That sounds fantastic, dude. Sorority cocktail night in University of Georgia. Can I get an invite to that? That sounds fantastic.
Dude, come on down, because like her mom and stepdad are Mormons, so somebody's got to help me drink these cocktails. Like, come on down, man.
Why is she having a sorority cocktail if she's inviting her dad?
It's for parents. It's like a sorority parent like come and visit me.
sorority girls has changed since I was
Well,
in the college.
Apparently, I would rather like have a cocktail in her presence than just be here and worry that she's doing like keg stands when I'm not there. So yeah.
Hanging out with the cocaine guy from the prelims.
Juancamilo Ronderos, I see you. Get the fuck away from my daughter.
Yeah, I did the research though. Yeah, you got me thinking about Jim Miller, but screw it. I'll go the other way just to make it interesting. I'll take Hernandez. I'll say he wins by first round knockout. I don't have a note, so I'm not gonna just ramble. And I probably could ramble at least on Jim Miller without any notes. But yeah, give me Hernandez. I say he turns back the clocks and knocks out. Well, not turns back his clocks, not Jim Miller's.
But honestly, if Hernandez does win, it probably is just a big one-shot knockout and Miller's chin, you know, crumbles to dust. Yeah. The UFC Fight Night 219 main card powers on, if we can even use that term, with what is scheduled as a light heavyweight bout between William Knight and Marcin Prachnio. Knight, the 34-year-old Connecticut native, is 11-4 overall. He is 3-3 since joining the UFC. He's 3-1 at light heavyweight, however. He went 3-1 in his first 4 fights in the UFC since joining out of the Contender Series in 2020. Won 3 of 4 and became, if not a contender, at least a curiosity just because of the visual image he cuts.
Yeah, stop. I'm glad you said not a contender. I don't know if William Knight was ever viewed as a contender.
No, but he's a guy that, I mean, it's kind of like a circus sideshow. If he's on a card, you're like, whoa, that guy, all right, cool.
Yeah, like I could see William Knight as like a circus sideshow. I can see him like ripping like a phone book.
Yeah, just bending the steel bar, like wearing like this leopard singlet like thing.
Next to like the bearded woman.
Yeah. But then last year was not a great year for him. He stepped in on short notice at UFC 271 to fight Maxime Grishin. He set a record by missing the light heavyweight limit by 12 pounds. I mean, he came in at 218 and responded to that, and he lost the fight. Then came back in April, took on fellow light heavyweight Devin Clark in a fight that they just agreed, let's just make it a heavyweight. Clark came in at 223 pounds, basically like a light heavyweight that didn't do the water cut. And Knight came in at 251 pounds for that fight.
Jesus Christ.
Once again, it didn't help him as Clark put him away in the third round, just busted him up. He's going to try to make it not 3 in a row against Prachnio. And we'll talk about the fact that this fight is back down at 205 in a moment. But here comes Prachnio. The 34-year-old Pole by way of the Netherlands is 15-6 overall. He is 2-4 since joining the UFC out of one championship where he came close to fighting for a title, but got injured and left the promotion during his recovery. He lost his last time out. It was actually to Linz. He dropped a unanimous decision to him back in April. Prior to that, he had won back-to-back fights in 2021 against Khalil Rountree and Ike Villanueva. That got him back on track after dropping his first 3 fights in the UFC against Sam Alvey, Magomed Ankalaev, and Mike Rodriguez. So this fight, close to a pick'em, as close to a pick'em as we have on the card. Prachnio minus 115, Knight minus 105. But there are a couple of books where they are literally just both even money, like both minus 110. And Keith, my first question is, do you think William Knight makes 206?
I mean, you don't really want me to break down this fight. I mean, it's not happening. This fight's not even happening.
Okay, so
William Knight's going to weigh in at 235 pounds for this fight.
Okay, so you're thinking he misses by enough that this fight actually gets.
I don't think. I think this fight's not going to happen. I really do. I think it's not going to happen.
All right.
All right. Next fight. No.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't think he's going to make weight. I would. William Knight is in. I've seen him in person. I like the guy. He's like fun. He's like a life of the party kind of guy. Like he comes by press row when he's not fighting, shakes everyone's hands. He's like a very bubbly kind of guy. Like, but yeah, the guy weighed 250 pounds his last fight, and he's he's not this big fat guy. Like, he's ripped. He's muscular. He's this great athlete. I wrote this in my notes and I refused to take it out. I saw him fight Jorgen De Castro as amateurs, and in between rounds, he was doing backflips. I'm not lying. He was doing backflips and breakdancing. The guy's got muscle on muscle. He's a balance between raw power and athleticism. If William Knight was 6 inches taller, he'd be in the NFL. He'd be
Bob Sapp.
Yeah, he'd be Bob Sapp. Yeah. His striking technique needs a lot of improvement. He's kind of slow. He loads up. He telegraphs. He pulls his head straight back. Due to being short in the division, especially when he goes to heavyweight, it's even worse. But he struggles to get inside. He really struggled to get inside on Maxime Grisham, but he's got huge power. I mean, he showed that against Fabio Cherant. He's got some thudding leg kicks, though he often throws them naked and leaves them open to counters. He will battle in the clinch. His small, his shorter height kind of gives him position to use his head in there. He can get some takedowns, some trips, some throws. He hit something against Alexa Kamer. Got mean ground Brown. I've said this before. If he's on top, it's got to be up there with like Derek Lewis with the scariest things. But he struggles with defense wrestling. He's been taken out 8 times by Dong Jung in their fight. To his credit, he's hard to control. He does well to get back up. He isn't a submission threat at all. He has tons of heart, though. He always finds a way. Actually, not always, but oftentimes in a fight where it's looks like he's starting to lose it, he gets the second win and he finds a way to battle back. He's also he might be one of these guys who just looks exhausted and still effective. You know what I mean? Like very like a Derek Lewis type, where he's taking big breaths, but he can still continue to fight hard. Prachnio, karate guy. Not a good athlete, kind of slow. His boxing is serviceable at best. Kind of just swings and doesn't have a lot of output. I do like his leg kicks though. He stopped Ike Villanueva with a body kick, which is nice. But he drops his hands when throwing, which could get him knocked out. He will battle in the clinch and grind a little bit, though he's a terrible defense wrestler. He was taken down 4 times by Philipe Lintz, who's not really known for his ground game. And his chin is questionable. He was knocked out in 3 straight fights by Sam Malvi, Magomed Ankalaev, and Mike Rodriguez. Now, of course, the Ankalaev, lost since then. Sure. Is aged really well. But I absolutely hate this fight. I think both guys are, I don't want to say terrible because that just sounds, I'm just being a dick, but they're not good. Prachnio is the more polished striker. I could see him easily just outpointing Knight from range, especially if Knight starts slowing down. However, Knight has the power, and he is, of the two, he's a surprisingly better wrestler. Something crazy, if this fight happens, something crazy is going to happen. I could see William Knight illegally headbutting him or something, and I almost want to just go with a draw. You know what? This fucking card, I'll go with it. Give me a draw.
There we go. Dude, we've previewed 7 fights on this card so far, and we've only agreed on 3 of them. We've agreed on fewer than 50% of the cards.
Wait, no. You're not going to build up your pick? You're not taking a draw?
I'm tempted.
As I said, if you make me pick a winner, I'll pick a winner.
No, you don't have to pick a winner.
No, I'll pick a winner. Give me Knight. I'm going to go with Knight. I don't know why I'm doing this. Give me Knight. I'll say he knocks him out. Second round, ground and pound.
There you go. All right. So we are 50-50 then on agreeing on fights in this card because I'm with you here. I don't want to say they're both terrible, but in most other divisions in the UFC, 2 guys like this flawed would just not be hanging around roster as long as these guys have. I think would be the best way to put it.
The least talented guy at flyweight is way more talented than these guys.
Yes. Yeah. Here, heavyweight, light heavyweight, and women's featherweight, such as it is the only place where fighters like this have staying power. Prachnio he should be a lot better than he is. He's this tall, pretty strong guy from Central Europe who has a karate background, and to the point that he went and he's trained out of the Netherlands for his entire career. You would expect him to be the poor man's Yuri Prohaska, and he's not even the homeless man's Yuri Prohaska. Like he managed to take like Kyokushin karate black belt and 15 years of training like with Dutch kickboxers and just become kind of a sloppy low volume brawler. I don't know how he did it, but he did it.
You watched Cobra Kai?
I watched all the first season.
Oh, okay. I was trying to think of the fat guy in Cobra Kai. There's like a bunch of teenagers fight, and there's like one guy who's like 40 years old. That's Prachnio. He's a 40-year-old. He's that guy. He has a funny nickname. I can't think of it. It's so funny. He's actually one of my very best friends. Is friends with him, the actor.
Oh, okay.
He actually sent my literally my very best friend a cameo saying, "Hey, happy birthday" and whatever. From,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I gotta look up his nickname while you're looking at it.
Oh, in other news, that's like definitely more important than UFC Fight Night 219. My wife and I are going to start watching The Wire. Like the easiest way to get me to watch a show is if like it's something that my wife can sit down a couple hours a night.
Good. It's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna watch
fifth season's but it's one of those ones that gets better every single time you watch it. There's more details that you didn't pick up on the first time. It's so freaking good.
And I'm coming into it completely cold. I know the names of a couple of the characters. I know kind of the quotes that have become big memes, but I'll kind of let you know how it goes. Yeah. I'm excited. Anyway, this fight, if not for the fact that Knight weighed in at 251 pounds for his last fight, I'd feel even more comfortable picking him. But dude, if he makes weight,
dude, you should never feel comfortable picking William Knight, no matter what he weighed in.
If he's even close enough to weight that the fight goes on, like say he comes in at like 211 or something, I'm going to be worried about his gas tank. But yeah, I'm with you here. It's going to be a sloppy brawl. Give me Knight to find something before they both get too tired. If this fight goes to the third round, it's been a bad fight. But give me Knight by first round knockout here.
Yeah, they should. That should be the next season of The Ultimate Fighter. Just get a bunch of guys who miss weight, just throw them in the house and get like stock the like fridge up with like ice cream and goodies, and then try to get them to make weight.
So instead of like the drunken like bash ups that we have every season, it's just a bunch of dudes sitting around just eating ice cream. And
I don't know. No, have whatever. What is it? 16 guys. Find 15 guys that always make weight, and then find like the most disciplined guy ever, the most hardcore guy ever. Throw him in there.
That would be incredible. Next up on the UFC Vegas 69 main card is what the UFC would have us believe is the only heavyweight bout of the night. That will remain to be seen. It is Josh Parisian versus Jamal Pogues. Parisian, the 33-year-old Michigan native, is 15-5 overall. He is 2-2 since coming to the UFC as a two-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He appeared all the way back on the second season, putting away New England's own, Rhode Island's own, Greg Rebello with a spinning back fist. That wasn't good enough to get him signed because back then, not everybody who won got signed. He came back on the 2020 season, knocked out Chad Johnson in the first round. That got him to the UFC, where he has alternated losses and wins ever since, losing to Parker Porter, defeating Roque Martinez, losing to Don'Tale Mayes, and defeating Alan Baudot. The most recent of those, the Baudot fight, was last June at UFC on ESPN, Sarukian versus Gamrot. Second round knockout for Parisian. He will look to make it 2 in a row against Pogues, who will be making his debut. The 27-year-old Californian is 9-3 overall. He is also a two-time Contender Series veteran. He appeared all the way back on season 3, where he took a unanimous decision over Marcos Brigagome. That wasn't good enough to get him signed. He had a couple fights in LFA, came back on the 2022 season and took a unanimous decision over Paulo Renato Jr. Apparently, it takes 2 wins over Brazilians on the Contender Series to get you to the UFC. Having stamped his little sandwich card, he now makes his debut, and he is a comfortable favorite. Pogues, minus 225, Parisian, plus 190. Keith?
I'm surprised by that line.
I mean...
He shouldn't be a negative 225 favorite against anybody.
And that's saying something because Parisian, dude, I like Parisian, and he's been.
No, you don't. You don't like Parisian.
No, dude, I actually think Parisian is awesome for non-fight related reasons.
Oh, okay.
But the story is bad enough that I don't know if I can even tell it on the show.
This episode, go for it.
Yeah, I'll tell it. All right. I'm friends with a lot of kind of local fighters and trainers down here in Houston and in Texas. And so I end up in Facebook conversations that, pull different people in. And Jeremy Mahan, the head coach of War MMA, co-founder of 4 Ounce Fight Club, an OG organization down here, but he's coached with people like, Trevin Giles. He's also kind of into the like Joe Rogan, like space, third eye, altered reality type stuff, if you know what I mean. And he posted a link to this article talking about how there could be alternate timelines with like alternate humans living on other planets in the galaxy, just, that kind of acid trip science shit. And people are saying, oh, that's nonsense or that's garbage. Or people are like, yeah, I think that's really true. I took mushrooms last night. And anyway, Josh Parisian pops in and says,
hold on. What's harder to believe, that or that was the right call of the Super Bowl?
Oh, there's no planet with any humans on it where that was the right call.
Yeah. All right,
but out of nowhere, Josh Parisian drops in and says, do you think the humans on other planets eat ass too?
Okay. That's
so right. I'm a fan. All right. Anyway, but
of Parisian or eating ass? What was it?
All of the above. All right.
Yeah. Have to put like a mature audience only on this one.
Yeah, like it'll be the one episode where I actually check that box. Having said that, on paper, by accomplishments, he might be the lowest level heavyweight in the UFC right now. Like barely beating Roque Martinez is not a good look. Alan Baudot, it's Alan Baudot's choice whether he wants to be. Baudot's terrible. Like, if Pogues is even the real thing on the level of like a Chase Sherman or Parker Porter, he beats Parisian. I just don't know if he does.
Let me ask you a question. Travis Brown hasn't fought in MMA in like 7 years or 8 years. He was never that good. He looks really out of shape. Who would you pick to win right now if they fought each other? Travis Brown or Alan Baudot?
Travis Brown. If he can make 265, he beats Alan Baudot all day.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. He's probably like 320 pounds right now because he's huge. He's like 6'7".
Yeah.
And
Pat Barry. Pat Barry hasn't fought in like 10 years.
Oh, Pat Barry leg kick take TKO late in the first round. Dude, I saw Pat Barry on TV on Saturday. He looks like he's still in pretty good shape.
Agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
And he's at least kicking the bag in the pads like on the regular because he's doing tons of coaching. So yeah.
All right, carry on.
Come back, Pat Barry. We missed you. I'm tossing this one to you for
no, don't do that. Okay. Jessica Andrade versus Josh Parisian, Mr. Ass Man, Josh Parisian. He's like the definition of lumbering heavyweight. Mm-hmm. Hand speed, just like he's talking about. Does other realms exist? Like his hand speed doesn't exist. He does have a busy jab. He throws a lot of jab. He's got some high volume for heavyweight. As you mentioned, he loves spinning attacks. He knocked out Greg Rebello or something, but he stands up really tall. His chin high in the air. He pulls his head straight back. We joked about Alan Baudot. Alan Baudot is cracking him. He's not a good wrestler. He was out wrestled by Parker Porter and Dontel Mays. Mays was passing his guard, which doesn't look good. If he lands on top in like a weird scramble, big heavyweight wrestling, he is big, so he'll be hard to hold down. But he gassed out against Parker Porter. He was absolutely gassed against Alan Baudot. Jamal Pogues, he's plotting. He's got some quick hands, but it's like, go back to his Contender Series fight, it was all single strikes. He's got a long jab, straight punches down the pipe. Not much power for heavyweight, though. So he lacks punching power. He's got some fast kick, especially a high kick. but defensively he keeps his chin high in the air. He doesn't check leg kicks. He was getting his legs kicked out against some on the Contender Series. He can wrestle. I do think that on the Contender Series they were talking about they were overdoing his wrestling chops. Like they made it sound like the heavy, like Kyle Snyder was out there, heavyweight wrestler for Jamall Pogues. He has one submission win, but he does have 2 submission losses. I hate this matchup. I think both guys are really poor. Parisian has a size advantage, but like Pogues is not a big heavyweight. But Pogues is.
Dude, can I interject real quick? I should have mentioned this on a card full of tweeners, but most of Pogues' career took place at light heavyweight. Like his 2 submission losses are both the light heavyweights. Like Alex Polizzi and Jordan Young were both light heavyweights.
Who weighs more? The weigh-ins, Pogues or William Knight?
I think and that's the other thing. Like Pogues' first appearance on the Contender Series was at light heavyweight. He came in for his most recent appearance on the Contender Series. He was like 239 or something.
Yeah,
dude, it might be close.
Yeah, Parisian's going to be like right at the limit.
Yeah.
That said, I think Pogues is faster. He might get a takedown every once in a while. Give me Pogues in a really terrible matchup. I'll say Pogues in a terrible decision.
All right, I'm gonna lean the other way here. I don't think we get a knockout on the feet, but in one of these collisions, I'm saying Parisian ends up on top and just pounds him out with like big man, like sloppy hammer fist, ground and pound. Give me Parisian by second round TKO. The co-main event of UFC Fight Night 219 continues the theme of light heavyweights switching back and forth at heavyweight, whether voluntarily or not. It is Jordan Wright versus Zach Pauga. Wright, the 31-year-old Southern California native, is 12-4 with 1 no contest overall. He is 2-3 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series. He appeared on the Contender Series back in 2018, got knocked out in 40 seconds by Anthony Hernandez for his first career loss, but that was later overturned when Hernandez tested positive for marijuana. So he debuted in the UFC in 2020, technically undefeated, but has had mixed results since then. He got things started off with a win over Ike Villanueva, but since then has lost more than he's won. He's currently on a 3-fight losing streak, all by stoppage, those being a knockout loss to Bruno Silva, a first-round submission loss to Marc-Andre Barrio, and most recently, last October, a second-round TKO loss to Duško Todorovic that took place at UFC Fight Night Grasso versus Araujo. Wright is going to look to right the ship and possibly preserve his job against Pauga, a man still looking for his first UFC win. The 34-year-old fighting out of Colorado is 5-1 overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a heavyweight finalist of the 30th season of The Ultimate Fighter. Had a pretty good first round against Muhammad Usman before getting his lights put out by a single punch just 36 seconds into the second round. So the heavyweight runner-up now returns to light heavyweight, where he actually spent the bulk of his career before The Ultimate Fighter. He is a comfortable favorite here. Pauga minus 280, Wright plus 235. Keith, who you got in this one? I mean, it's not a great sign when our co-main event has a guy who's on a 3-fight losing streak against someone who is 0-1 in the UFC, dropping down in weight for the first time in his UFC run. This is as rough as it gets, man.
This is not a good card, but when you who's in charge of the placement on the card? When you look at all these things on the card, this is the one you go with. This should be the co-main event. Like, not a Jim Miller who's a legend in the sport, not a guy like OSP who's been in some big marquee fights, not guys actually coming off wins. No, let's go with this one. I mean, I know like I said, I'm prepared, and I definitely feel like we
got two former UFC title challengers on this card. We got Lina Lansberg and Ovince St. Preux, and they're not even on the main card.
There you go. So I know I'm And we will be honest with Bashikard. I'm overdoing. I'm trying to like, I don't know, do my best Jeff Sherwood impersonation. We're just unprepared and just throwing off nonsense. Jordan Wright, he's big for the weight class. He has this karate style, but he's never a good athlete to back it up. Like you still need a Stephen Thompson athleticism to make it really work. Mm-hmm. His hands are slow. He keeps his hands low. He does have power. I mean, knocked out Jamie Pickett. He knocked out Ike Villanueva. He'll throw some spinning attacks, but he's got huge defensive holes. One, his chin is high in the air. He backs straight up. He's been knocked out on several occasions. Bruno Silva, Anthony Hernandez, Joaquin Buckley, Dusko Todorovic. They all knocked him out. Now, he can – actually, I think the best part of his game is just like wrestling. He can clinch a little bit and grind in there. He'll wrestle more than you think. He showed some skills against Dusko Todorovic on the ground. He has 5 submission wins, though he was submitted by Marc-Andre Barrio, which hasn't aged well. He's got some strong ground and pound, but a big concern to me was his last fight. He really gassed out against Todorovic, which isn't good. Zach Pauga, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. He's a minus athlete, but he does pressure well.
Let me interject one thing here. It's worth mentioning that Wright's last couple of fights were 185, so he's actually coming up to 205 while Pauga is going down there. Do you think that'll make a difference with his gas?
I do. I think it's better for him. Yeah, absolutely. It's better to. Well, it depends. I mean, if he's just eating, some more steaks and drinking more water and that, yeah, sure. If he's hanging out William Knight and he's, like going to the buffet and stuff, no. But yeah, I definitely think it's good. I think it's good for his power. I think it's and I think it's definitely good for his cardio. Now, Pauga, he's got some good vision. He appears to see a lot what's coming at him. He uses feints well to set up his shots. Type of a hold your ground striker where he's not going to back up when you crash in on him. He's going to kind of try to beat you to the punch. I'd say his volume is pretty good. Busy jab. He attacks with combos. He has this like winging overhand right, which is his best strike. He also has this like short left hook. He caught Jordan Heidemann with it. It was a good blow. I like that he works the body. He will throw out some spinning attacks I'm not crazy about, but I'd say for like he has plus power. Again, like does that get zapped out going down and weight? I don't know. But overall his power is pretty good. He's weak defensive wrestler, which could be surprisingly be an issue against a guy like Jordan Wright, which again, I think is a slightly underrated wrestler. But he's got a good get-up game. But you have to worry about 2 things after his last fight. He was knocked out cold by Muhammad Usman. So you got to wonder, one, will his chin hold up? And 2, will he be gun shy? Will he not use that pressure that's been a big part of his game? Wright could wrestle his way to a victory. And again, as you said, 15 minutes up a weight class. I like his cardio better there. But, I'm still not trusting it. I think Pauga works him on the feet. I think he stays busier. I think his volume and power advantage is something to, lead me that way. I think he presses the action. I think eventually he outpaces Wright and he crumbles him with something. I'm going to say Pauga gets a late stoppage. Give me Pauga by 3rd round TKO.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the line is as wide as it is here, but I don't have any faith in Wright after these 3 losses. He's lost these fights just about every way you can picture. I mean, against Bruno Silva, he just got beat to the punch by a guy who was faster and had more power and got plunked. Against Barrio, he made a mistake and got tapped out. And then against Todorovic, as you mentioned, it was a fairly competitive fight, but he gassed out fast and got put away. Just that every way you can possibly lose a fight, he's managed to do it in his last couple of fights. It's a whole different ball game if Pauga has a miserable weight cut and like misses weight or comes in like looking absolutely horrible. But again, this is him going back to 205 after just a brief hiccup at heavyweight. And it's not like he let himself go. Like he wasn't a sloppy mess against Usman or in his fights on the show. So yeah, give me Pauga. I'm going to take him by decision here. Wright might have some success early on, but I think Pauga will be the fresher guy late, and he'll probably be throwing more volume from the start. So yeah, he wins 2 rounds out of 3, at least, and walks away with the decision here. That brings us to the main event of UFC Fight Night 219, a women's flyweight matchup between Jessica Andrade and Erin Blanchfield. Andrade, the 31-year-old Brazilian, is 24-9 overall. She is 15-7 in the UFC. She is, of course, the former UFC strawweight champ, but relevant to this fight, she is 4-1 at flyweight. Her only loss at flyweight came in her unsuccessful bid to win the title there against reigning queen Valentina Shevchenko. Aside from that, all of her fights at 125 pounds have been brutal. She has stoppages of Caitlin Chikagian, Cynthia Calvillo, and Amanda Lemos, and a one-sided decision win over Lauren Murphy. Andrade is on a 3-fight win streak. She beat Murphy just 4 weeks ago at UFC 283. Taila Santos was originally set to take on Blanchfield here. Santos fell out of this fight. Andrade steps in on just a week's notice. She had proclaimed after the Murphy win that she wanted to move back down to strawweight and challenge for the title there, but she apparently could not pass up this opportunity, so she appears at flyweight once more. Standing in her way is one of the brightest prospects in all of the women's divisions. Blanchfield, the 23-year-old New Jersey native, is 10-1 overall. Keith will tell you that she should be 11-0, but she is officially 10-1. She is on a 7-fight win streak. The last 4 of those since joining the UFC. Since joining the UFC in late 2021, she has unanimous decision win over Sarah Alpar, another decision win over Miranda Maverick, a second-round submission of JJ Aldrich, and most recently, at UFC 281 last November, a first-round submission of Molly McCann. She will look to make it 5 straight, possibly certify herself no longer a prospect, but a contender and maybe the next challenger for Shevchenko's title. But she is a slight underdog in that pursuit. Andrade right now, minus 175, Blanchfield plus 150. Keith, of the women in the 125-pound division that are kind of that class of rising prospects, Blanchfield, Miranda Maverick, Macy Barber, Casey O'Neill. I mean, you and I have been high on them since before they joined the UFC in every case, but you in particular have been on the Blanchfield train since the beginning.
Yeah, she's great.
And every time we've talked about her, you've said future champ, or at least, future multiple time title contender. So my only question for you is this fight too much too soon, or is this the level up moment?
That's the big question. Man, let's do something, because we we're not going as long as we normally do. Let's give
we could talk for an hour and a half about this fight and it would be average
shorter than most.
Yeah.
What's your biggest fear in life? What's a fear of yours?
Fear?
Afraid of snakes, afraid of heights. What's
definitely not into spiders and like nasty insects in general. They creep me the hell out. Existential fears. I don't want to die by drowning. I'd prefer that not happen. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I think my scariest thing is having to fight Jessica Andrade on like a one week notice. I mean, I was sitting there thinking about this, and I'm like, maybe it's a good thing for Blanchfield that the fight is on 1 week's notice. So now she only has 1 week to think of what Jessica Andrade is going to do to her, instead of like a full camp of thinking about what Jessica Andrade is going to do to her. Is it too much? It is a huge, and again, now Taila Santos was a big step up in competition too, from Molly McCann to Taila Santos, who arguably in a lot of people's scorecards, mine included, thought she beat Valentina Shevchenko.
Yeah.
But it still feels different than facing Jessica Andrade. And again, Andrade, I mean, is it the best version of Andrade that she's taken out a week's notice? So, I mean, you get thrown to Jessica Andrade. So you know what Jessica Andrade can do? She's a high output striker who fights in these blitzes and just overwhelms her opponents with ferocity. I've said it before. It's almost like she runs at her opponents. She just gets in the pocket She does hang her hands low. She keeps them low, but she's absolutely fearless. She's not worried about getting hurt. Now, she's had struggles at times cutting the cage off against, elite strikers, people like Rose Namajunas, Yoni and Jacek. Her wild style got her blasted against Weili Zhang. But those are the exceptions. I mean, when she gets in her range, she is a nightmare. She's one of the biggest hitters in the history of women's MMA. She throws tons of power shots. And what's most impressive about it is she has this incredible cardio that she can throw power shots for the entire fight and not slow down. I mean, she just gets in the pocket, lands hooks, uppercuts. She appears to have even more power at 125 than 115. I mean, you look at like the Caitlin Chikagian fight. I mean, that'll show you that. Some really hard calf kicks. She has been open to getting her own lead leg kick because she has that really like low base. But she's a great wrestler. She grabs you, she launches you. I always bring up the first Rose Namajunas fight where she won the title. I mean, she picked up Rose and slammed her, but everyone always remembers like slamming her on the head, but she picked her up and slammed her like 3 times. Mm-hmm. And she has some of the most vicious ground and pound. She takes you down. It's a scary thing to get hit by Jessica Andrade way on bottom. Now, Erica Blanchfield, and I'm going to start off what I always do with Erica Blanchfield because I promised to until she actually loses the fight. I'm going to go to my grave saying that she beat Tracy Cortez, that she should be undefeated. She is an absolute stud. She looked amazing against Molly McCann, her last fight. She isn't a great athlete, but she's a good technician. Her striking is coming along, and being that she's only 23, like it could still make huge jumps from that Molly McCann fight to this one. But she's a little flat-footed. I do like her volume and her pressure. She moves forward. She's a pressure counter striker, likes to slip and rip. She's starting to show her power. She's starting to gain power, being that she's only 23. I mean, she's starting to go from a girl to a woman. I don't mean that in insulting. Like say like, oh, you're 23, you're a girl. I mean, like, it's different. Your body changes.
Yeah, it's the same thing that happens to a male fighter between ages 20 and 23.
Yeah. So she throws a bunch of leg kicks. I like that. She doesn't check leg kicks, which it was a little bit of an issue, but she had that incredible high kick knockout against Victoria Leonardo and Victor on her way up, which is really impressive. But all that striking does a purpose, and that is to distract, to get her to get you down. She's an absolute elite fighter on the ground. Good entries. She likes to like go to a single leg, run the pipe. She can also get takedowns from the clinch, upper body locks, inside trips. And I mean, she showed in the Miranda Merrick fight, like the skills she has in the takedown department, which doesn't get talked about. We always talk about what happens when she gets down. Now, her ground game is elite of the elite. I mean, it's that good. Incredible top control. Some of the greatest ground and pound you'll see. She has this mean, like she just comes off like super sweet and nice in interviews, but she has this mean streak when it hits the ground. I mean, she battered McCann in that nasty crucifix position. She is a BJJ black belt. She's an EBI world champion. I mean, she's a true submission specialist. Got that great Kimura against Molly McCann in the last fight. I'm super high on Blanchfield, as you mentioned, but this is Jessica Andrade. I think she's levels ahead of Blanchfield on the feet. Now, if Blanchfield can get the fight to the ground, she could do some serious work. And she's a gamer. Like, she could find a way to get to the ground, but that's hell of a feat against someone who's like, short, kind of like what we just talked about, Alex Volkanovski being shorter, stockier, getting underneath her is harder than your average person. And if she doesn't get her down, I think Andrade swarms her with power shots and volume like Jessica Andrade does. I think it's too much for her. I think it's going to be too much too soon. Give me Andrade by second round TKO from Strikes.
Yeah, I'm with you here. And this is, well, I mean, of those class of women, Manon Fior, is probably just a little bit ahead just because she's 10 years older than some of these other women. Like, the time is now. Like, Manon Fior is 32 years old. She doesn't have another 5 years to develop.
That said, that's a very intriguing matchup if they fought each other right now.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying, oh yeah,
and I'm talking about Blanchfield and Furrow, not.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like, but Fior, because of the age difference, and frankly, looking pretty polished in her fights, is the one that's gonna get into the title picture first. If she keeps winning. But for the rest of them that are in their early 20s, this is the highest level fight any of them has taken. This is a tougher fight than like Barber or Maverick or O'Neal has had.
And you're saying this before this matchup. Like, if she beat Jessica Andrade, she's fighting for the title next.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
But
and she would have been.
I want the listeners to know what you were talking. You're talking about before this change.
Yes, and she would have been if she'd beaten Taila Santos as well. Taila Santos, I favored Taila Santos slightly over Blanchfield, but I saw tons of upset potential. I saw clear routes to victory for Blanchfield against her. Here it's tougher. You've laid out already kind of how terrifying Jessica Andrade is. To come up with apt comparisons for kind of her skill set and her approach, you have to leave the women's divisions. Like, you can say it's almost lazy to go, like Cyborg or like early Amanda Nunes. No, it's like Pride Vanderlei Silva, just pure aggression. And Silva was shorter than most of his opponents and gave up reach to him, and he made it even worse by never throwing anything straight. It's just all these just mean hooks coming in. That's Andrade.
Oh my gosh.
Rarely tries to bring the fight to the ground, but if they end up there, absolutely terrifying on top.
Ben, think about something for a second. Imagine if Jessica Andrade could soccer kick or stomp.
Oh,
imagine her holding like ropes and stomping down. Oh my gosh.
Well,
anyways, carry on.
And I mean, we said on our recap after one of Andrade's wins, it was one where, she won a fight, but we were like, it's going to take her forever to. Oh, it was after she beat Chikagian. Or no, it was after she beat Calvillo, because, was coming back from the Shevchenko loss. And we're like, well, it's going to take her forever to get back to Shevchenko. Let's just send her on a world tour. And I said she could go over to one championship and soccer kick Angela Lee into the ocean.
Oh my
God. And I still stand by that.
Oh,
she'd be horrifying if she could throw soccer kicks and stuff.
Think of how horrifying she is without him. Never mind adding. Oh my gosh. She might physically take someone's life.
If they go to the ground and Blanchfield is not badly compromised when they get there, all bets are off. Even if Andrade is on, even if Andrade is on top, like, I could see Blanchfield surviving the ground and pound, tying on Andrade up, looking to sweep or submit. But I have the feeling if they go to the ground, it's going to be because Andrade plunked her.
Yeah, I totally agree too. I think she might try to get it there, but yeah, I agree.
And
I'll say this: all bets are off if Blanchfield's on top. If Andrade is on top, yes, Blanchfield could sweep her, she could submit her, but it's like less likely. But if Blanchfield's on top, yeah, I agree with you.
Because Andrade from the bottom, she's pretty basic. She doesn't do much other than try to get back up.
Yeah,
she'll shrimp, kind of try to shove him or kick him off and get back up. That's her bottom game. Again, kind of Vanderlei Silva like.
Yeah.
Blanchfield, I mean, she's going to be a little taller and have some reach on Andrade, but she's not like Blanchfield isn't a tall flyweight either. Even she's like pretty compact.
No, average, yeah.
And it doesn't matter, because if Caitlin Chookagian can't keep Andrade out of like her red zone, then nobody in that division can.
Yeah.
So as high as I am on Blanchfield as a future contender, if not champ, this one looks pretty basic to me. Andrade just racked up like multiple 30-25 scorecards on a top 10 contender at flyweight and came out without a mark on her. I think she's going to show up and swarm on Blanchfield early, probably hurt her early.
Yeah.
Blanchfield will survive. Like you said, she's a gamer. She's super tough. She's the type of fighter that, as skilled as she is, Blanchfield is going to end up winning multiple fights at some point in her career just because she's like tougher and has more heart. But this ain't one of them. She'll survive to late in the first round, but we'll probably get a TKO on the ground where Blanchfield already looks like she's taken 3 rounds worth of punishment. Give me Andrade by first round TKO here.
Yeah, think about this for a second. Imagine if we're wrong. Imagine if Blanchfield does take Andrade down and swarms her on the ground like the Molly McCann fight, or gets a crazy submission against Jessica Andrade. Just imagine what we're saying about her after that.
Well, I mean, we're immediately talking about her versus Valentina Shevchenko, and has the time finally come for maybe the most dominant fighter in the sport? I'd be I'd be happy to have that conversation. I have no rooting interest in this fight other than it keeps the division interesting. And I mean, if Andrade puts away Blanchfield, the UFC is going to have to give Andrade whatever she asks for, because otherwise it's going to be like, I'm going to stick around for 2 more years and just destroy all of your up and comers.
Ruin all your plans. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on this one before we wrap a very abbreviated preview?
No.
Well, that's been it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 219, Andrade versus Blanchfield. I've been your host, Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time listening to one of our previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. They are normally much longer than this, but this is a short card with, frankly, not a whole lot going on. But nonetheless, again, hope you enjoyed it. We try to bring a mix of actual analysis and the occasional humorous or historic asides. Please do give us a like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. And if you think we're way off on any of these picks, and again, I think I picked like half upsets on this thing, so let us have it. But most importantly, join us for the recap. After the main event, we are live on the Sherdog YouTube page, usually about 15 minutes after the final horn, where Keith takes the captain's chair. We will break down all these fights in reverse order, starting with the main event, working all the way down to the first cocaine encrusted prelim. We'll talk about what was good, what was bad, what was controversial, what was surprising. There's always something. We'll talk about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers. But most importantly, the live chat is open during that show. So we're taking your questions, your comments, your hot takes in real time. It's a highlight of the week for both of us. We enjoy interacting with you guys and hanging out after the fights. We have a growing community of friends that we do that with, and would love you to join them. Between now and then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy football season being over. Remember that the refs just need to swallow that whistle in the last 5 minutes of a championship game, and definitely enjoy the fights.